Hey, hi, hello. My name is Oscar and Fire, and I am here to listen to the terrible acoustics in this portion of the house, and also to talk a little bit about Star Wars again, because, man, I am a loser, a nerd loser. Anyway, yeah, I am here to talk about Star Wars because Star Wars Rebels finished its run just this week, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit because I think it has because I think there's some relevant things to discuss about the general trajectory of Star Wars. Something I'm not going to do, incidentally, is talk about Star Wars Episode 8, if only because I haven't actually watched the movie properly. Though, frankly, I've spoiled the entire damn thing watching reviews on YouTube. Yeah. You could say a lot of things about that fact, but it doesn't really matter at this exact moment, because I'm not really going to talk about Episode 8. I might make a couple of... I might make a couple... What? I might make a couple of oblique references to it, but I'm not going to talk about it directly until I've actually watched it. Probably later this month. I didn't really want to. But anyway, so Star Wars Rebels came to an end on Monday, and I have to say, as far as the finale is concerned, I found myself a little bit underwhelmed, and there's a few reasons why. First of all, on its own merits, I enjoyed the finale a lot. It was a good finale. But there were a lot of questions in the back of my head that were really bothering me about it. And I kind of want to address them as I pick at my eye. It's very classy, very professional. That's something that people do, yeah. Yep, definitely. So first of all, I think that the finale of Rebels was very capably done. It did everything it could to kind of wrap up plot points. It brought in some plot points from the past again. Plot points and characters and so forth from the past again, and on the whole, it was a very satisfying conclusion. But there have been several details that have been nagging at me. And I think, first of all, the biggest thing that has been bothering me about Rebels as a whole, ever since they announced that the fourth season will be the last season, is the fact that it feels like they cut it short. And this isn't the first time I felt like they cut something short, because they also cut the Clone Wars short. Because ever since Disney bought Lucasfilm and all its subsidiaries, of course LucasArts was shut down, but Lucas Animation in this case, Lucas Animation, as soon as Disney bought them, they basically shut down the Clone Wars, and that irked me. The shutting down the Clone Wars irked me, because the Clone Wars seem to have at least one more season in it. And you can kind of feel it too. Like, you can feel it in the way the stories are written, the way the characters are written. You can feel that the Clone Wars was not finished. Frankly, they had a whole half season worth of episodes that they could put on Netflix. And I'll tell you right now, I think that two of the storylines in that season were very well done. You know, two of those storylines, because most of the storylines in the later part of the Clone Wars were all done in 4-episode mini arcs. And I think their best arc in the Clone Wars came in Season 4 during the Battle for Umbara. I thought that was the best arc in the series hands down. But they had two good arcs as well in the final half season. They had the whole Fives arc, with Fives almost unraveling Palpatine's plots to kill the Jedi, and the final arc with Yoda going on a journey of discovery. I thought that was a very interesting approach, because it allowed you to kind of explore Yoda. It allowed them to explore Yoda rather, in a way that his character hadn't been explored recently, or explored at all, I should say. Why did I say recently? But there was potential for more stories, though. Because Season 5 ended with Ahsoka Tano leaving the Jedi Order because she felt like the Jedi hadn't done enough to help her and protect her from the accusations against her, because they didn't. She was clearly, we knew as an audience that she was being falsely accused, and what we saw was the Jedi doing next to nothing to help her in the tribunal and in the charges being brought up against her. And while that was a nice way to cap off the official run of the series, there was obviously so much more they wanted to do. It's clear that they wanted to bring the series right up to the very beginning of episode 3. I imagine that the original conception was that the series itself was probably going to end immediately before the Battle of Coruscant, or shortly before. Some implication that the Battle of Coruscant is right around the corner when the Clone Wars ends. But Disney cut that short. And now we have that happening again with Rebels. Rebels has been cut short by a season again, I think. Possibly even 2, but I want to say just a season. But I have the sneaking suspicion that what happened is that the executives, announced to Dave Filoni's team that he was going to have 2 more seasons and they were going to end it. And that caused them to, it caused them to kind of move their timetable for how they were going to get the stories to play out. Because, we want to get Obi-Wan Kenobi at least into the story at least once. We got to resolve the Darth Maul plot. We got to resolve the Mandalorian plot. We have to resolve the whole Lothal issue. And he had to truncate that down into 2 seasons instead of spreading it out. I think that's part of the reason why there was a time skip between seasons 2 and 3. As opposed to having a more gradual story between 2 and 3, where we kind of see Ezra playing with the Sith holocron some more, and seeing a little more Darth Maul. A lot of things started to feel a little rushed. And I feel like actually that's the big problem with the finale. A lot of it feels kind of rushed. A lot of the finale is too tidy. It's too neat. The liberation of Lothal is too neat and tidy. The way the Empire is defeated is a little too neat and tidy. I mean, not the fight getting up there, but the way the battle ends is too neat and tidy. And in some ways it was somewhat unavoidable, but it could have been built up better. And I'll get into that in a moment. But it was too, it was done too neatly. There's man, I'm trying to think, because there's a lot of thoughts going through my head, and I'm invariably going to forget some of the details before this video is over. But I'm going to try to get through everything I can, because there's quite a bit to unpack here. But I guess I should talk a little bit more about how I feel like the series has been truncated. Because, of course, I already talked about how they had all these things they wanted to put into the series, but, they had to stuff it into 2 seasons. They had to stuff it all into 2 seasons. One of the things that I thought was actually the most disappointing about the fact that the season that's ended now at season 4 is the fact that I wanted to see a lot more of the growth of the rebellion. I wanted to see how they got from the point they are at the end of season 3, where it's a bunch of scattered cells. The fleet that gathers at Adelon is basically the largest rebel fleet to gather before the Battle of Scarif. And I wanted to see a little more of the growth between that point where they lose that fleet at Adelon to how they gather their forces to have a large fleet at Scarif. I wanted to see more of that. I wanted to I wanted to see a couple of cameo appearances. See who General Merrick is. The blue leader from Rogue One, or Admiral Raddus. I wanted to see them a little bit. Like they don't have to go deep into it. They don't have to have a cameo of every character from Rogue One. You don't need Cassian Andor necessarily or anything. But it would have been nice to see a little bit of that. It would have been nice to see a little bit about how the Alliance functions from day to day. Instead, we go into Season 4, and immediately we're on Yavin 4, and the Rebel Alliance is kind of just established. But we needed a little more. I feel like we needed more than that. We needed to see more than that. We needed to see how we go from, you got the Phoenix Cell led by Hera Syndulla and Commander. The hell, why am I British now? Commander Sato, and we needed to see, we go from, and the group commanded by General Dodonna, and who knows who else, and how we get from there to Scarif, And I think that's the biggest downside. Another thing that really disappoints me is how little we get to see of this in this entire season. How little we got to see of Rex and Callus, Agent Callus. Our defector. We only get to see him at the very beginning of the season and the very end. We don't get to see him anytime in between. And it would have been so nice to get at least 1 or 2 episodes where he plays a prominent role and we get to see how he fits into the rebellion. See how he gets to use his imperial knowledge, his knowledge of the inner workings of the Empire. Because in the finale, he says how he tells Governor Price how he knows if she's going to be faking a clearance. She's going to be faking, the clearance code that will get them into the dome. And it's like it would have been nice to see more of Callus using his inside knowledge of the Empire's workings to help the rebellion, and we don't get to see that at all, because the season focuses almost entirely on Lothal. It would have been nice to get a little more Captain Rex, because Captain Rex is a cool character. Rex is just a really good character. From the Clone Wars to Rebels, he's very compelling and very interesting, and you can tell that Rex, like Ahsoka Tano, is one of the creative team's babies. They love Rex, and they're not going to do any. They went so far as to retcon the old man Commando from the Battle of Endor as Captain Rex. I mean, that's cool, and I appreciate that because there's nothing wrong with it. It's just nice. It's a nice touch. So I guess I've been talking a little bit about the negatives. I wanted to put something that I thought was. Talk about something that was really positive, but I just decided to fly the coop just now. What the heck you do, brain? Okay, I remember now. It was the fact that the entire season focused on pretty much the entire season, except for the first 2 episodes, I think it was, focused entirely on Lothal. I thought that was a really good approach for this, and here's why. The reason I think it was a very good approach was the fact that it allowed them to be very focused. If they had tried to do every story they had envisioned in their head, the season probably would have seemed very unfocused, and as a result, it would have been really unsatisfying. Instead, by having the Mandalorian plot wrap up at the very beginning of the season, and then having everything focused on Lothal after that, I thought was very, very smart. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that they have that their creative team is smart enough to think, okay, we have a very limited time frame to wrap up only so many stories. If we're going to let's do Obi-Wan in 1 episode, let's get the Mandalorians done in like a half dozen episodes. Let's wrap up Darth Maul, in the Obi-Wan episode. And then let's focus this entire season on Lothal, because Lothal is the cornerstone of this entire series. It is the primary location of the series. It is the driving force for what our main character, Ezra Bridger, wants to do. He wants to help and liberate Lothal. So we got to focus everything on Lothal. And that, I think, is the reason why Rebels is ultimately a very successful series. It's because the creative team knew how to go about it. Because the Clone Wars ended a little messy, because they were still going along on the same sort of trajectory they were going during season, for season 5. That's the end result is that they had a very unfocused ending for the little half season on Netflix. So learning from that, and maybe even possibly anticipating that Disney might do this again with Rebels, they did a very good job in deciding to go all in on the Lothal plot. And I think on the whole, Lothal was done excellently. I love the mysticism aspect of it, the deeper Force connection that Ezra seems to have with his planet at large, and that's kind of emphasized through his relationship with the Loth Cats and the Loth Wolves. And the fact that we kind of get like a sort of even helpings of seeing both rebel activity and Imperial activity. We get to see a lot of get to see a lot of the machinations of Governor Price and Grand Admiral Thrawn, and and focusing in like that really did the series a service and made it end on a very, very high note. Again, it could have done something a little different. I still feel like its trajectory was Lothal would have been this season. Lothal would have been the focus. Lothal would have been would have been the focus this season. But then, like in the 5th season, they would have focused on the Alliance at large, the growth of the Alliance, the looming threat of the Death Star, rather than having the Death Star kind of being a one-off event with the last appearance of Saw Gerrera. They would have done a little more. In fact, I'm sure they would have done a little more to also depict what happened to Saw Gerrera to make him a relatively healthy middle-aged man to a borderline crippled cyborg relying on a psychotropic gas to numb away the pain. I think we should. I think they wanted to also depict what happens to Saw Gerrera. It would have been a little dark, but we know the team can do dark based on some of the story arcs in the Clone Wars. And even the finale of season 2, we know they can do dark. Kanan Jarrus getting blinded and everything. That's all. That's serious stuff. That's a serious and that's serious stuff. I don't know why I keep saying serious stuff. Okay. Anyway. But yeah, I definitely approve of how they handled Lothal. I'm glad they decided to resolve the Lothal arc more than anything. And I guess that brings me down into the finale, because how they resolve the arc, I don't know. It's like the very end that irks me. Everything before that is fine. I like how they bring in Rex and Hondo, and I like how what I really like. Let me diverge here. Hondo. I really didn't like what they were doing with Hondo in previous seasons. They had him, they brought him back, but they almost flanderized him a little. They got rid of a lot. They used him for a lot of humor, and they got rid of a lot of the base nobility that made him an interesting and compelling character, as opposed to just another stupid comic relief character, almost like a more articulate Jar Jar Binks. Because in the Clone Wars, Hondo is a pirate, at his core, but they show that he actually does have a good heart. He's just really selfish, and he's kind of counterbalance the two things. But in this series, they showed him being more selfish than noble on multiple occasions. And seeing him come around and join up with a rebellion just to liberate Lothal because he likes Ezra Bridger, I thought was really good. We see a little bit of Hondo, but we get to see the part of Hondo that we really like. The part of Hondo that makes him not just a good character, but a good man. And I really enjoyed that aspect. I like that they did that, because that was missing in almost all of his previous appearances in Rebels, and was sorely needed, because Hondo is a very, to use a word that sounds almost wrong, is a very human character, and that is something that we should, and something that we really should respect. We should respect that sort of basic humanity that we can recognize in his character, and I don't know, I wasn't actually going to extend that sentence any further. What did I do? Okay. But I like that they brought together, a handful of characters from the past. I can't remember that woman's name at all. But I remember her episode, sort of. I just remember her. I don't remember what she did at all. But I like that. I like that they brought it all together, because it was, because it served. Something I really wish they had the time to do. I wish they had shown what happened to Gregor and Wolf, because like they just like after the episode that the clones appeared in, they just disappeared and it was just Rex with them. And I wanted to know where Gregor and Wolf. It would have been nice to just get at least like like a 2, 3, even 5 minute scene where like we see them refurbish the AT-AT they're using, and that they're using when we see them again, and just get and we just get a bit of a sense of what they're doing. Like they just like joining the rebellion is not for us. Rex, you do whatever, but it's not for us. But we don't really get that, and I find that a little disappointing. But that's fine. Same thing with the lady whose name I still don't remember. But that's fine because whatever. I also like that. Something I didn't like actually is the fact that Rook spends most of the finale getting his ass kicked, instead of Rook actually like getting some good hits in, except for wiping the floor with Wolf and the others and Vizago and the kid. And instead we get to see a little more of what he can do. Make him a little more of a credible threat. Also, the stormtroopers completely missing Ezra Bridger, even though he's being levitated by the Royal Guard staves. Whatever technology that was, I'm not sure, but I can gloss over that bit. Like the stormtroopers, like you kind of got to be careful with that because it's a little hard to take the Empire seriously as a threat when you see things like that, and Rebels is littered with it, but it's really glaringly obvious in this finale. The fact that only Belch and Gregor get shot when people have a lot of trouble taking cover in this series. In general, it just kind of irks me. Because I mean that's one of the aspects I like about Rogue One is the fact that no one's really safe except for characters that we know are going to at least survive until A New Hope, like Red Leader and Gold Leader. It's like no one's really safe, and in the end, most everyone dies in Rogue One. Most everyone whose face we see dies in Rogue One. But that helps to paint a clear picture of the kind of threat the Empire poses. And I wish Rebels kind of took that facet a little more seriously than it does. I wish the Empire was a little more threatening. And that's really where the introduction of Grand Admiral Thrawn is so important, is the fact that they don't really step on Thrawn. They don't make, whenever someone gets fooled or bamboozled or defeated, it's never Thrawn. It's always one of his subordinates, and it's not ever Thrawn's fault. It's always a subordinate's incompetence that's at fault. Governor Price, makes a bunch of mistakes because she is too dedicated to the idea of killing the rebels rather than being intelligent about killing the rebels. Admiral Constantine, Admiral Constantine's mistake at the end of season 3, it should have been built up to a little more, but you can kind of see why he would chafe under Thrawn being placed over him. But I wish they had built on that a little more before he disobeys orders and gets himself killed. But aspects like that, it's nice that they didn't step on Thrawn himself. Thrawn has a lot of good ideas, and if his underlings weren't so incompetent at executing these plans, he would come off a lot better. All right, but I've been putting it off a little, but I have to get to the finale of the finale, the very end where they finally defeat Grand Admiral Thrawn. First of all, kudos to the whole Ezra meeting with the Emperor thing. I really liked that. I really liked that they show Ezra being a flawed human being without making him a stupid human being. I like that they show that, one of the things he loves above all else is his parents, and he cherishes his memories with his parents. And he cherishes them so much that you can tell that he's sincerely and seriously contemplating the Emperor's offer to, to travel through that gateway, but ultimately just end up altering history, and how he rejects it because he knows that there's something more important that he must fight for, and that includes his parents' legacy. There was also just a small little touch. There was something else I also enjoyed, and that was the wow, Flux. Why did you turn off the yellow screen? You just brightened everything on my face right now, and it's really awkward. Okay, anyway. But there's something else I also enjoyed, and that was getting to see an animated version of Emperor Palpatine before he got all the scars on his face and everything. It was nice to see that without like the whole caricature version from the Clone Wars, because in Clone Wars, the artistic style was very caricature-ish, and that was and that kind of stands out from time to time. So it was nice seeing Yoda in season 2, and seeing Obi-Wan last season, seeing Palpatine this season, uncaricaturized, and that was I appreciated that greatly. Just as a small touch, but I appreciated that whole sequence because it was very moving. It was very, it was a powerful character moment, and I really appreciate it. What I didn't appreciate was the Purgle, and not for the reasons you think. I didn't appreciate it because it felt very Deus Ex Machina-ish, but it didn't have to feel that way. Because what they really needed, and this again would have tied into them having a whole other season to work with. In one episode, I can't remember if it was season 2 or 3, we get to see the Purgle, right? We get to see these giant space whale squid things, and Ezra helps them. Ezra and the Ghost Crew help them. But we never see them again until this final season, where they summon the Purgle to defeat the Imperial fleet, which they defeat way too easily, in my honest opinion. It would have been interesting to see at least the Purgle take a handful of casualties before they finally defeat the Imperial Starfleet, right? I think that would have been a lot more compelling to see. It would have been, would have had a little more emotional pull to it rather than the very easy, the Purgle ram everything and destroy everything aspect. They are called Purgle, by the way. I'm going to keep calling him by that. I'm calling him by the wrong name. I don't think I am, but if I'm calling him by the wrong name. Anyway, but it could have benefited from them having another episode to build on this plot point. Because when the kid mentions Frequency Zero, my mind actually immediately, we haven't talked about these creatures since we first saw them, but my mind immediately went to them because they were the only thing that Ezra could possibly think of to summon to help, since they're not going to summon the Alliance fleet. The Alliance fleet isn't strong enough to take on the Imperial blockade at Lothal. The Alliance fleet wasn't strong enough to defeat 2 Imperial Star Destroyers in the Shield Gate at Scarif. There's no way they were going to be strong enough to breach the fleet at to breach the blockade of Lothal. So the only thing I could think of is they're going to call the giant space whale squid things. And I feel kind of justified in thinking that at the beginning of the episode, and then being vindicated. But it could have done with a little more establishing, because we already know the Purgle. We know the Purgle first off are sentient, if not sapient. So we know that they're going to know Ezra Bridger by sight. We know that they feel some feelings of affection, if not friendship, toward Ezra Bridger. What we needed, though, was another episode with the Purgle where they show Ezra, bonding with them further and finding out that they can use Frequency Zero to communicate with them. Because I don't think that was ever established in the episode they appear in. As far as I know, this wasn't established. Or at the very least, they could have reinforced the idea. If it was established, I think I'm right on it wasn't, but if it was, they could have used another episode to reinforce it, to deepen Ezra's bond with them, so that we know that when they really need it, the Purgle will come and help them. And that would have gotten rid of the whole Deus Ex Machina vibe of it. It would have gotten rid of it, because we would have established that the Purgle are available to help. It would have established that, and it wouldn't have felt quite so weird, because the Purgle are a huge part of why everything feels so neat and tidy at the end of the episode. Something else that they needed to do was establish a little more about why Ezra was so confident in the path he had chosen. I think we as an audience needed to see a little more about what Ezra was seeing, about what the paths he was seeing were. I think we could have done that in the previous episode when he's inside the Jedi Temple, or even the Celestial Temple. I believe that's what it is. I believe it's another iteration of the Celestial Temple that we see in the Clone Wars, where Obi-Wan and Anakin are, meet the father, son, and daughter. I believe we were in another iteration or another part of the Celestial Temple, but this part exists in between time and beyond time. Like the one part of the Celestial Temple, they're seeing it and they're perceiving it in a way that they are meant to perceive it. Ezra's perceiving the Celestial Temple perhaps as it really is, or in a way he's meant to perceive it here, where he gets to see different events in the past. And maybe they could have used that to establish that, Ezra kind of catches a glimpse of the future or potential futures, and using the episode to kind of demonstrate those potential futures. Or we just see the visions he's seeing, because Ezra's clearly doing a lot of meditating and trying to see into the future, and he's seeing potential paths. And it would have been amazing to see a little bit of that and to understand why he's so confident, and why he's so confident that even Sabine trusts him enough to let him do what he feels he must do. Because I don't feel like that was established well enough. I felt it, but it didn't click out. It didn't click well enough. There wasn't enough establishment for it to click properly. And I felt like I needed more of it to click properly. I needed to see more. I needed to see why Ezra was so determined to follow this path. And even though he didn't know all of it, was willing to do what needed to be done regardless of what he experienced. We needed a little more of that, because it's almost weird, because everything seems to fall into place way too easily. And just to see what Ezra was seeing probably would have helped a lot with that. And my final quibble with the episode is I really wish it hadn't ended with the little montage at the end, the little Sabine montage and voiceover at the end. Because, again, it wraps up the series way too neatly. I mean, Hera has a kid, and it's like, really? I mean, I'm not gonna go around and assume that, that before they declared their love for one another, that Hera and Kanan weren't having a couple of rolls around in the sheets. But at the same time, I'm just like, I really wish I had known this had happened. not explicitly, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of fan art of that. But, not explicitly, but, like some implication, that maybe this, this is going to happen. Okay. Incidentally, this also implies that Hera was probably several months pregnant when she was flying during the Battle of Scarif. Huh. Interesting. Okay. But anyway, but that whole little montage and voiceover at the end, I don't know. I understand why they did it, but it felt a little trite. It felt a little trite and a little contrived, and didn't feel like a way you would end a Star Wars story. It might have been better. It may have been better without the voiceover, maybe. It would have been better maybe showing everything a little more chronologically, doing it a little more stylistically so that you convey what happens more with the visuals than with the words. I mean, I know it's a show geared toward children, but, a lot of people who are watching Rebels have now, grown older with Rebels. I was 24 when Rebels started. So, it's like, so you got to think if a kid started watching Rebels when they were 8 or 10, they're 12 or 14 now. They could probably handle a montage without a voiceover, that has lots of implications and so forth, and just let us kind of write the story in our own heads. I think that would have been a lot better. I like the little tease at the end that shows, Sabine and Ahsoka getting ready to search for Ezra even. And I also like that Filoni has confirmed that not only is Ezra alive, but Grand Admiral Thrawn is alive. Because I was almost disappointed, because it felt like almost like Thrawn was going to go out like a chump almost, defeated by something that he can neither predict nor cope with. But the fact that Thrawn is alive, I'm very happy with, because Thrawn is a great character, and you can't kill him in a cheap way. You can't. Just like they didn't kill Ahsoka off in a cheap, not even a cheap way, but they didn't kill Ahsoka off. They didn't kill Thrawn, and I appreciate that. Incidentally, I must add that I liked the way they saved Ahsoka, because I predicted all the way back at the end of season 2 that Ahsoka was still alive, because there's little subtle hints there. There are little subtle hints that Ahsoka's still alive. I just didn't know how, and I kind of like that they used this method to save Ahsoka, because I just thought it was interesting. It was a nice twist. It was a nice twist to introduce at this point, long after we've forgotten about Ahsoka. We're not really thinking about her, and suddenly, oh, wait, no, oh, wow. It's like, I appreciate that. I appreciate that they kind of pulled this out of left field again to, but not in a bad way. They kind of pulled it in a way that was, that could be appreciated by the audience. A resolution to this thing that happened 2 seasons ago. But yes, the montage I could have sort of done without it the way it was handled. So yeah, those are my general thoughts on the finale of Star Wars Rebels. On balance, Rebels was a phenomenal show. It was a great show. It was done wonderfully. And again, I wish they had a whole other season to do everything they wanted to do, because you can tell with the way certain characters are written, certain events are written. I just realized I've been leaning back and I've been really weird and off center for probably the past 15 minutes. And I know I've been recording for probably 25 or so now. I don't have a counter here telling me how long I've been recording, but I'm assuming it's been 25 to 30 minutes. But Rebels, my impression of Rebels overall, it was a great series. They took what they learned from the Clone Wars, built on it to make something that was much sharper, much more focused, much better done. The Clone Wars has its ups and downs. Rebels was almost all ups. Even its comedy episodes and arcs. Actually, it was just one-off episodes. I don't think there were any comedy arcs. They were just one-off comedy episodes. But they were all very, very well done. Very well done. Sorry, I just remembered that Imperial droid that defected. Whatever happened to him? Did he appear this season on Yavin 4? I think he appeared once. Maybe? I'm not sure. Anyway, there's another character that kind of got the shaft because of how they had to do the season. But Rebels was a great experience. They did a whole bunch of things that, that would have seemed like they would have been questionable at first. Like bringing Darth Maul back, for example. That could have been a disaster, but they handled it very well. Bringing, bringing Princess Leia in for that one episode could have been bad. It was handled well. Lando Calrissian back in season 1, it was okay. It wasn't terrible. Bringing Hondo back could have been terrible. Almost was terrible. Completely redeemed by this finale. Captain Rex, Ahsoka Tano, all these little callbacks. They did it very well. And of course, just the general plot points. They did very well with what they had. With the time they had, they made a great series. And I'm reminded, actually, I watched one of the reviews I watched of episode 8. I can't remember the YouTube channel, but the guy was talking to Dash Star. He got Dash Star, the Star Wars YouTuber on. and they were talking about Rogue One. They were talking about The Last Jedi even for an hour. And Dash was talking about how he doesn't, I think he brought up Rebels in this point. He talked about how he doesn't feel like Disney is making Star Wars for the diehard fans. What they're trying to do is they're just trying to milk it for its cash cow status. So what they're doing is that they're making content, they're making content that will appeal to children, build it for like 3 or 4 years, and then they're kind of just resetting everything. That's why they canceled the Clone Wars early. That's why they've canceled Rebels early, is because they're not making content for the diehard fans. And I think Dash is right. I think he's completely and absolutely right about that. Because Clone Wars was phenomenal, and Clone Wars clearly had a whole season of stories left in it. They were starting to run out, but they clearly had a whole season left where they could tell a few more stories in the Clone Wars leading right into Episode 3. And Disney cut it short. With Rebels, they could have led right into Rogue One, and Disney cut it short. And I think Dash Star is right. I think he's right about that. I think he's right that Disney isn't respecting diehard fans enough. I'm gonna leave The Last Jedi out of this because I have no personal experience with actually watching the movie. And while, again, I've watched tons of reviews, I do not feel like I am sufficiently qualified to talk about The Last Jedi in this. Though watching the reviews has given me a sense that he is, that reinforces Dash's point. That they are not doing service, they're not doing well by the diehard fans. And I find that disappointing because it is clear they can make good content. Rogue One, Rebels are both proof that under Disney's leadership, they can make good content. Even The Force Awakens is proof they can make good content. I have my issues with The Force Awakens, but I have lots of like little things that bother me about the movie. But things that could have been alleviated, that could have worked, but sound like they didn't. Again, not going to talk about The Last Jedi, but directly. I probably will have a video about The Last Jedi after I watch it later this month when it comes out on demand. But because I know that I spoiled my opinion on it. I know I got a friend who's very disappointed in me for that, but I don't care. I'm sorry, but I don't. I don't care about that because I think that I'm perfectly capable of making mature decisions about how I approach the media I consume. And we'll see how The Last Jedi goes. I will give it a fair shake as I watch it, and I will see if the criticisms I've seen are actually fair or not. Because sometimes you can see sometimes you can see things and they're a little overblown or they are the wrong perspective, and I want to genuinely give it a fair shake. But I will say this, given the sheer amount of disappointment directed towards The Last Jedi, I will say this much. It feels like Disney is taking the Star Wars franchise in the wrong direction. Whether you like The Last Jedi or not, just based on the number of fans who are viscerally dislike The Last Jedi, and seeing how they have cut short two excellent cartoon series, I can sincerely say that I feel like there is a valid argument to be made that Disney isn't doing right by the Star Wars franchise. And that's sad because when Disney first bought Lucasfilm, I had expressed cautious optimism that Disney will do right by Star Wars because Disney is known for vociferously defending its intellectual property, and for using its intellectual property, sometimes in bad ways, but often in good ways. Disney has made plenty of movies that have been highly successful. but they seem to be milking Star Wars way too hard. Kind of like that weird cow thing from The Last Jedi. Oh my gosh, it's a euphemism. Listen, it's just a joke. I'm not commenting on the worth of that scene one way or the other. Anyway, I should say sea cow. Anyway, okay. Anyway, but it is demonstrating troubling signs though, and these are just things that I think should be taken into consideration. So, anyway, I know this was very long, very rambly, but I just wanted to get all these opinions out there because there was a lot in my head. There was a lot I wanted to talk about, and you know, it's like honestly, having talked about it, I feel a little more satisfied about the finale of Rebels now. You know, like yesterday, I'm like, I just wasn't sure what to think, but today I feel like, okay, I've said my piece. I think I've even addressed everything I wanted to without forgetting anything. And you know what? It's like, yeah, okay. I can put it to bed now. I feel satisfied by it now. So, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. There will be certainly more Final Fantasy XI music videos coming out. Castle Cheval is up next, and then I'll be moving on to Rise of the Zillard. Though I'm actually thinking I'm gonna have to play the game a little bit because when I ended my subscription, I gave it over to my friend Avalon, and he absolutely gutted my character of gear, and I kind of have to re-gear her a little bit so that I can travel to some dangerous areas, and also just because I want to play my warrior, and he gutted almost all of the gear, and it's just like I gotta get my gear back, I gotta get some armor back so I can at least play semi-effectively. So we'll see, and it's just gonna stretch out how long it takes me to probably finish this project, because it's a 55 video playlist, and I won't be able to do maybe 5 or 6 of the videos just because they are instances that I can't get into easily. Which is disappointing because I would really love to hear Awakening in-game again. But anyway, there's that. Third Age Total War, the next episode will probably be up next week. I don't have the time really I don't think I'll have the time to record again this week. It's really late now and I'm going to be too tired. I don't know about tomorrow because I have work early on Friday. Tomorrow being Thursday. This is probably going to be up Thursday, so tomorrow, Friday. Anyway, so Third Age Total War, Episode 2 of Erebor, definitely probably up next week. So just keep an eye out for that. Anyway, alright. So that is it. I want to thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time for more chat about Star Wars and whatnot, or something. Till next time, everybody.